So LeBron was on McAfee a few weeks back. I could probably get 6 minutes about the changing sports media landscape or whatever, but I don't really want to talk about that. Here it is. 2 generations ago, Jordan was interviewed by Dan Patrick, a serious journalist. Last generation, Kobe Bryant was interviewed by Stephen A. Smith, a serious journalist. Back then. In this generation, we have LeBron James interviewed by Pat McAfee, a punter, in order to build up a beef with Stephen A. Smith, now some great and terrible combination of pro wrestling manager and shock jock. In the interview, LeBron managed to diss the basketball media, retired players, Smith himself, and the critics of his son. It's a clear sign of the basketball media straying from serious coverage in favor of manufactured storylines that emphasize the individual pundit at the expense of real coverage. So you got all that? Good, I'm done with that. I can only complain about the so-called worldwide leader for so long. The best way to beat them is to outwork them. That's why I'm here, that's why the best channels on this site are here, and we're not stopping anytime soon. Anyway, during the interview, James alluded to the conspiracy that the NBA lottery, the process that determines the order of the top 14 picks in the NBA draft, is rigged. Most famously in 1985, Commissioner David Stern allegedly sent Patrick Ewing to the New York Knicks, and in later years sent LeBron to his hometown Cavaliers in 2003, and Chicago native Derrick Rose to the Bulls. Does LeBron really believe these things? I don't know. He's having a laugh throughout the interview, and it's a pretty common meme in NBA culture, so who knows. I care less about whether James personally believes this, and more about why it exists in the first place. This goes beyond your average sports conspiracy. This is something that has persisted for decades, past the point when all the participants have left the league. In short, why do we think the NBA lottery is rigged? First things first, let's understand the conspiracy. Legend says that in 1985, with the New York Knicks struggling and a new lottery system to determine the draft order, NBA Commissioner David Stern hatched a plot. The envelope bearing the Knicks logo was placed into a freezer. That way, when Stern handpicked the envelope, he would search for the coldest one and deliver Ewing onto the Knicks. Later, the league office hatched similar plans to send LeBron James to Cleveland, Derrick Rose to Chicago, and most recently Victor Wembanyama to the Spurs. The idea is that you want the best prospects going to big markets, or maybe where they came from, or the best situation, whichever is most convenient. The word of the day, kids, is confirmation bias. It's a phenomena where someone selectively recalls events or evidence to help support their prior beliefs. Happens a lot in sports. For instance, player A tends to perform poorly whenever they are refereed by official B. Here are a few games where that happened. Therefore, official B must hate player A. That's what's going on here. The logic of the conspiracy twists and turns to meet reality. First, the league office sends Ewing to the Knicks to get him to a big market because big markets equal big money. Next, they send Rose and LeBron to their hometown teams, which the league cares about for some reason. Then, they send Wemby to the Spurs so he can be nurtured by their development culture, a system built by coaches who have mostly departed the team by now. There isn't really any rhyme or reason to the theory. Worse still, it ignores all the times the league apparently forgot to rig the lottery. For example, in 2012 and 2019, why did the NBA send Anthony Davis and Zion to New Orleans, a team without an owner for years and a B-Tech medical staff? New Orleans isn't the biggest basketball market in the world, so it doesn't make sense from that perspective either. In 2015, why did the NBA send Karl Anthony Towns to Minnesota instead of the LA Lakers or the New York Knicks, both of whom had high lottery odds that year? Why didn't Yao Ming go to a West Coast team, thereby increasing ratings with fans from East Asia? Why haven't the Lakers picked number one since James Worthy? Why did Cleveland win the lottery 4 times in the 21st century when New York has failed to for 40 years? I could go on for days about this, but you get my point. If the NBA is in the business of rigging the lottery, they really suck at it. But back to the original point. Why do we make conspiracies in the first place? I talked a little bit about this in the Chris Paul vid, but there's a narrative underneath all conspiracies that appeal to us. There's something really comforting that David Stern, this great and evil and powerful man in the body of a gnome, found it necessary to rig a contest none of us have a material stake in. It means the NBA was worth rigging. Not just to enrich the owners, but to make a better product for all of us to watch. Every story needs a villain, and Stern played that role to a T for decades. It's why he encouraged the boos at his final year announcing draft picks in 2013. It's why he threatened to shut down the league in 1999. It's why he always grinned, giving his typical corporate answers to media interviews. Adam Silver almost certainly has higher approval ratings than his predecessor, but it's also meant the NBA lacks a clear-cut business guy villain. When you're in the storyline business, that's a problem. Also, I think that the rigged lottery conspiracy is a way for fan bases to cope with bad outcomes. I'll be honest, the Zion lottery really stung in the moment. Eventually, things worked out, and I'd definitely rather be the Knicks right now than the Pels, but that night really hurt. I was working at this restaurant, and I was cleaning the grill. Me and my boss were watching the TV. They pulled out the Knicks card for pick number 3, and we both just sunk. It hurt not only because we were missing out on 2 blue chippers, but because there was nothing we could do about it. We lost to pure randomness. It's not like the league would screw over big market New York in favor of Memphis and New Orleans. When you're a fan of a small market team, at some level you're a feeder for the big clubs. They can offer the big money, they can offer the big endorsements. Eventually the best players tend to end up with the Yankees or Madrid or the Lakers or whoever. Calling the lottery rigged is another way to, if not heal that inequity, at least bring some kind of closure when your favorite player leaves. And that's that. Was the Ewing lottery rigged? Probably not. Ewing became one of the league's brightest stars and helped elevate the Knicks to heights not reached since the 70s, a peak they are only now threatening to return to. It doesn't make sense that Stern would rig the lottery this one time and then just forget to. Trust me, this is David Stern we're talking about. He had other means of getting his way, let's call it that. Anyway, it's a shame that outside New York, this is kind of the last word on Ewing's career. This dominant inside player who just so happened to play in the same era as Shaq, Olajuwon, Robinson, consistently fighting for a silver medal in MJ's East. This season, we're in store for another exciting lottery. Duke's Cooper Flagg is a shoo-in for the number 1 spot. Will shadowy forces steer him to big markets like Philly, Washington, or Chicago? Will small markets like Portland or Charlotte finally have the chance of making the playoffs and winning a title for the first time in years, if at all? Who knows? Wherever he goes, he'll do well. I think Utah would be a great spot for him. Something about Flagg would really connect with those fans.